Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pits of Motorcast. This is host Dave. I got on the line with Great Lakes Dragway track announcer Mike Gould. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Mike's also a drag racer. Drives a Red Baron car.
That's right.
Now, Mike, when did you first start doing the announcing at Great Lakes Dragway?
Well, I'd say it's probably been about 10 to 12 years now, maybe 10 years. And I started announcing at the Real Street Drags event with Trent, of course, Mark Mueller, otherwise known as Outplaying, and of course the one and only Tough Enough.
Tough Enough. Brian.
That's right.
Good old Brian.
Yeah, Brian gave me my first shot at announcing. We had a little a radio program, kind of an internet program. We did the RSD radio, and it was a call-in show, and it was a blast. Trent did a great job getting an audience there. You know, it was a different time, though. Bandwidth cost a lot of money, not like the Facebook stuff live and all that stuff that you have now. Right. So it wasn't practical to keep doing it at the time, but we had a blast doing it. And after that, we moved on to going up to the track and announcing. Brian introduced me to Randy Henning and Marcel, of course, and back then even Dominic Blasco, the owners of Great Lakes Dragway, and they gave me a shot at announcing at the Real Street Drags, and then we moved on, eventually working with Mark Mueller and, of course, the great Pat Hart, working with him on some of the bigger events, and since then I announced the big events, of course, the Labor Day race, the Memorial Day race, all the Real Street Drags events, the Nitro Streetcar Brawls, and of course I get to work with the great Mark Dietrich, who is just a encyclopedia of drag racing knowledge, and I'm so blessed to work with him because I don't have that knowledge that he has and the experience with the racers, and he really has a special connection with the like the Legends, the 1320 Legends crowds, the Gasser crowds, some of the old fuel-powered dragsters and funny cars. Mark has, he's on a first-name basis with a lot of those drivers, and his experience and his knowledge of those drivers is just invaluable announcing those events.
So when did you first get involved in drag racing? When did you get into drag racing? What year?
Oh, gosh. Probably back in the mid-'80s. I bought a Dodge Challenger from a local guy, and had a big block Dodge in it, and that was cool. And raced it on the street, or drove it on the street for a while, and never did hardcore street racing with it. I never was able to get close enough to it. I had too much motor. It was all sticking out of the hood. I had dual quad, tunnel ram, and all that nonsense. So anytime I drove on the street back in the mid to late 80s, it was a different environment back then. I lived in Wheaton, and the police weren't very friendly to the streetcar kind of scene. There wasn't cruise nights like there are now. You can't throw a rock without hitting a cruise night any night of the week, at least in the DuPage County area. And back then, it wasn't like that. You were kind of frowned upon, and you get pulled over for various different reasons, whether it's too loud or the rear bumper is too high. It wasn't a welcoming environment for your street scene back then. So we started to take the car to the track, did a lot of trophy racing and stuff. Scraped together whatever money I could to get to the track, and had fun. And that's what it was all about. Just having a great time. And after that, I started a family and kind of didn't race for some time. And the car sat, and luckily for me, it was a good investment car. It was a 70 RT convertible. It was a real RT, and so it had a lot of value. I was able to sell it through eBay when the market was really hot, and that's what afforded me to be able to buy the 92 Camaro that I drive now.
So now, throughout your career of racing and announcing, how many awards have you gotten?
Oh, gosh. I don't think I've really gotten many awards, official awards.
Trophies?
Trophies, oh yeah, we have the, back in the day, Broadway Bob would hand out the trophies, and you would go on like a Mopar weekend or something like that, or a Dragon Boogie weekend. I'm remembering some of the trophies that I got. And once you were eliminated from competition, you would take your ET slips and you bring them down to the trophy trailer, which was, for all I remember, was back behind the main grandstand. And Broadway Bob would be back there. And, you may go out in the first or second round, and you'd walk up the stairs to the trailer, and he'd be in there. And you'd give him your slips, and he would say, "Oh, man, I got just a trophy for you." And he'd come back with a monster trophy that, was super cool. And, it motivated you to come back because it was like, wow, check out the size of the trophy I got. You take that home, show it to the parents, your friends, whatever, and it was really cool. So, yeah, that was some of the, just trophy. Never won a whole lot of money racing, never really entered in any big bracket races, things like that. I did bracket race the Challenger, but the Camaro, I've never really bracket raced it. It's just a fun car. We use it for exhibition, kind of for promoting the real street drags, both at Wisconsin International Raceway and at, of course, Great Lakes Dragway. And one of these days I'm going to try and get down to Route 41 and race on Tim's track. I did some announcing for him last year, and, he's really trying to do great things with that track. And despite what you think that the tracks may not, be friends with each other, the rising tides rise all ships. And, we're here to promote drag racing. All the tracks have that in mind, and they want good racers, they want good events, and there's plenty of room for everybody to have a good time. And, yeah, long answer to the question. No, I didn't really, race for a whole lot of money or any kind of special awards. It was always just to have fun and go out and have a good time.
Now, back when you started drag racing, do you have any drivers that were inspirational to you back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. Growing up, I'm what you'd consider a first generation drag racer. My dad didn't drag race. He was a Ford guy. He had a cool Galaxy, and he showed me some pictures of some cars that he's had in the past, but never really a drag racer. My brother got into it for a while. He was doing some front-wheel drive, Dodge, turbocharged, nitrous-powered cars, and he took it to the track once, and he was really good with that thing. And but it wasn't really in the family, and I got involved with it kind of late. I mean, I really, I think the first inspiration that I had was 1976 or 1977. Go with a neighborhood buddy of mine. We went and saw a movie called Funny Car Summer, which was, of course, about Big Jim Dunn, and a documentary, if you will, of him in the season. And I remember things on that movie, like the kids doing fire burnouts with their Schwinn bicycles and racing in a shopping mall parking lot on their bikes. But mostly just the sights and sounds of it. I never really went to a drag race. I didn't go to Oswego. I was never there. I was never at any really racing drag strip until the late 80s when I was actually racing myself. But we got to go to see some of them. We see the Time Machine Nationals and whatnot at the Great Lakes Dragway as a spectator, and that was fun. But as far as persons, racers that I admired, and how timely, here he is, he just passed Bob Glidden. I can't think of a drag racer, whether they're a Ford, Chevrolet man, or woman, import, whatever the case may be, the great innovator and the great drag racer, Bob Glidden, and how fantastic his entire family was and still is. But Bob Glidden was an influence. Of course, growing up with Diamond P, watching the racers, John Force's career was something of certainly to admire. But then, of course, Big Daddy Don Carlitz, the greatest innovator of the sport's ever known, and following his career and watching the things that he's done over the years and continues to do is fascinating for me. So yeah, Bob, of course, Glidden, big name, that the folks that are on the NHRA tour and are common household names. But even there, I still have local heroes that I admire. Racers that are on the track now that are really doing things innovative and doing crazy stuff and really dedicated and passionate about the sport. Guys like Pete Demos with the Chicago Wise guys. Of course, guys like even Mark Mueller with what he's doing with the racing with the motorcycles, gathering them up and getting the motorcycles a place to race. Even the guys on the bikes, Phil Stoll, I'm just amazed at how, they get to handle those bikes down the track. A lot of the guys that race the COT series, the Grinch driver, and of course, Joey Ravioli with his Mustang. Some fantastic local racers that, I get the chance to call their races and admire them for their efforts. And I think that's something that is almost the criteria for me. I mean, you can be a successful drag racer, and that's great. But what I really admire and really respect are the people that put their passion in and work very, very hard to get what they have. And I've always admired that about a lot of the racers at the Great Lakes Dragway. Even some new, fresh faces up there. Russell with his new style Dodge Avenger. That guy has put more laps on that car in the second half of last season than I've put on mine in my entire career. And it's just something to admire. And there's a certain amount of passion and a personality to admire guys like him and many of the guys that at the track, as a matter of fact, even Randy Hennig, understanding his career and his passion for the sport, and not just for the sport, but even for the track. Getting to work with him and seeing his passion for the track and the money that he's invested, the time that he's invested. His wife, Claire, of course, just sinks every moment they have into, making that track a success, and that's certainly admirable.
Now, how about, like, Arnie the Farmer Beswick?
Oh, gosh. Arnie the Farmer Beswick, fantastic. He's in the Drag Racing Hall of Fame for a reason, and whenever he comes to the track, I always make a point of shaking his hand and, reminiscing about a story that I heard years and years ago and look him in the eye and say, Arnie, was that true? Did you really do this? And just having him kind of snicker and, looking into that face of his and his hands and just to see how burned up they are. But, if that isn't the definition of dedication to a sport, and we all certainly have guys like him to thank for the safety devices that we have at our disposal now. But, of course, Arnie the Farmer Beswick, and there's a lot of great racers up there that have been there for a long, long time that are certainly worth admiration.
Dick Messino.
The Messino gang. Of course, Shake, Rattle, and Run. And George Lopez, Mike Lopez, the driver and everything. The Shake, Rattle, and Run crew. Love the original car. And, that thing's going to be on rails and run every time it's there. It's a crowd favorite. I have an old picture of it running at the International Amphitheater. Got to talk with my father-in-law about the International Amphitheater and the indoor drags. Len Davidson, he passed away a couple years ago, but I was able to get him up in the tower, and he got a jet car ride before he went. But he reminisced about good old days in Oswego, of course, and International Amphitheater, and watching guys like Arnie the Farmer Beswick and Shake, Rattle, and Run racing indoors in January in Chicago. Just amazing stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, Shake, Rattle, runs too fast for Arnie to go against anymore.
Yeah, that new car they struggle with. It seems like when that it's got a tremendous amount of power. It's got the hood scoop on it that I think takes air in from about 30 feet above the car. And I know they've been working on the chassis for that for quite some time. But when they get that car dialed in, it is certainly going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, Arnie was telling me, he's like, I don't got that kind of money to get my car going as fast as their car.
Yeah, I think Arnie's always been a low-budget kind of guy. I mean, he's a farmer. That's his deal. And I was just talking with someone the other day about how Arnie, talk about a passionate racer, actually drag raced against a quarter horse on the dirt. Now, I haven't had a chance to confirm that story with him yet, but that'll be the next conversation that I have with him. I heard that he had actually raced with his altered car, a jockey on a quarter horse.
Yeah. I know he just did a race up at Cordova this year against one of his funny cars.
Yeah, I know he has of course, the tailless tiger, and I think he's got another driver for that right now. I think that his name eludes me, of course. That's one of my weaknesses. I'll sit in a room full of people I've worked with for 10 years and forget every one of their names. But, yeah, he has certainly other people driving some of his cars, but it's always great to see Arnie get behind the wheel. He was getting buckled in at Great Lakes Dragway just this springtime, and I had my phone right there and clicked off a couple of shots of him getting buckled in, the tailless tiger, right before he made a pass with it. And certainly something to watch every time, not only going down the track, but coming back from his burnout. You better stay out of his way. He'll come back faster than half the guys drive forward.
Oh, yeah. Now, what about Richard Hutchins?
Richard Hutchins is a living legend, certainly. And every year that we see him at the Labor Day race, the Memorial Day race at Great Lakes Dragway is a treat, of course. And he is just an amazing man as far as his sense of humor, the stories that he can tell. He is certainly a fan favorite at Great Lakes Dragway with his wheel standing Chevrolet. And just amazing, the stories, the history, even stories about, of course, the legend there himself and another member of the Drag Racing Hall of Fame, Broadway Bob. Richard Hutchins will tell you stories about him. Just amazing stuff. Really, really funny guy. And always happy to see him at the track. And he's working on quite the project with Randy Henning right now. And so he's been very busy with him. And look to see Randy Henning with a wheel stander built very, very similar to Richard Hutchins' current unit.
Yeah, I heard Richard has like a lifelong contract to run at Great Lakes Dragway.
Oh, I can imagine. Anytime he would want to run there, contract or not, that gate would be wide open for him from not only the employees there, the owners of the track, and, of course, all the folks in the stands.
Yeah, he's one of the longest-running wheel standers out there now.
Oh, yeah, and he'll remind you of that he's been doing that long time, and certainly when he's driving, that experience shows. I mean, he's a showman, and I think he understands it. And he taught it to me. You know, he understands that it's all about putting on a show. It's not about who wins or loses. It's not about who wrecks. It's not about who goes the fastest. It's about who puts on a show for the fans, and Richard Hutchins is a master at that.
Oh, yeah, exhibition cars, that's what they do, put on a show.
Definitely, and he knows that.
Then, of course, you have another old-timer that comes there, Jim Brewer with the Peacemaker. He was there when that tragic event happened over there.
Yep, Jim Brewer and the Peacemaker, great guy, family racing operation. And, yeah, there was a tragic situation happened there at the track this year. And Richard Brewer, he was there at the event. But, just like most of the other drag racers, and like everybody in the stands, including Mark and I in the tower, we had no idea that had gone on in the pit area, or it wasn't even in the pit area, in the front parking lot area. It was a complete different, almost like a different event, if you will, going on. But, he is such a showman. In fact, his wife goes out there and has the chase vehicle with the fireworks going off. His son this year had I believe it was a golf cart.
Yeah.
was a wheel stander. Yep. And he is, once again, a showman. 2 years ago, he came back down the track, and his brakes overheated as he raced toward the tower in the near lane, which would be the Heights Automotive lane, the Heights lane. And so here comes this wheel stander flying towards the tower. The front end slams down, and he's on the brakes hard, but they overheated. So now he really effectively has no brakes. He's coming in hot. And the one and only Tough Enough is sitting there right next to the tower in his Tough Jet. And, of course, he's coming right at him with a wheel stander. Tough, of course, in his true natural fashion, watches Jim Brewer fly by, and then he just cuts the wheel and is able to avoid any contact with any of the race cars or certainly any of the fans. And, I went out of the back of the tower and I went over by Tough Enough. I said, Tough, you okay? You all right? You going to be okay? And he goes, Tough, it was like it didn't even matter to him. Hey, make sure you announce that we're about to start the jets up. Make sure you announce that the jets are coming out. Come on, man, let's get this crowd fired up. Just unbelievable, typical Tough Enough, and, wanting to keep the show going. He was fine. Don't worry about him. Make sure Jim Brewer's all right. He got out of the truck, and the show went on, and Tough Enough didn't miss a beat. I mean, that car, the wheel stander and Jim Brewer went by, inches from the door, or the driver's side, if you will, on that Tough Jet. It was just amazing.
Now, talking about Tough Enough, we had a wild incident with him in Memorial Day weekend with the fire.
Yeah, he did have a problem, and it was a kind of a maintenance issue / mechanical issue. I think Tough learned a valuable lesson at that, and his attitude about maintenance on the jet car changed significantly after that event. And basically what happened is a very, very small particle of foreign matter, I'm not sure what it was, got into his fuel, and it worked its way to the fuel valve that supplies the extra fuel for the afterburner. And if anything gets stuck in that, what it does is once the engine is turning, and that you have to do that to start it, obviously, it flows raw fuel into the afterburner can section, which means the primary side, the initial compressor and the igniters, they lit, and they're fine, but in the meantime, all this raw fuel had poured into the back of the afterburner, into the can, if you will, and once that lit, it was going to burn until it went out. I mean, it was certainly a big fireball. I know that there was a lot of concern, safety concern. Is it going to blow up, whatnot? But that wasn't any, in Tough's mind. Basically, what he was trying to do is, save the car, of course. And, he hops out of the car once they're telling him to get out. And his instinct is to, help put this fire out. And the first hose he grabs is the water box hose. And all the employees at the track basically know that that's just literally a small 12-volt pump that's just designed to put water down for the water box. It certainly wouldn't be used to be putting out a fire. But once Tough and the crew got the hold of the fire extinguishers, they were there in just a couple of seconds and putting the foam down. Good old Tough Enough in his haste. He hops out of a car, burning a car, no problem, hops down.
Twisted
but in his haste, he slipped and fell and broke his ankle.
Yeah.
In the foam, trying to put the fire out. But very minimal damage to the back of the car. The timing system for the track got damaged. There's a line that goes from the corner of the tower that goes to a shed, which takes all the data from all the timing mechanisms, and that line did get severed. And basically, that caused us to have to end the event on the fact that we had no more timing system.
Yeah, I was there for that one.
Oh, it was fun, but like I said, I think Tough Enough is the kind of guy who was going to learn from it, and And from that point on, he has just a tremendous wealth of knowledge at his fingertips, whether it be a telephone call or just to take a few steps over to his pit. The one and only Danny Sullivan, of course, driver of both the Chicago Rush dragsters, jet-powered dragsters, is always willing to step in and help Tough with not only mechanical but safety mechanisms. And, he always has his advice. And Danny Sullivan's a great guy. One of the hardest working guys I've ever known in the pit. Work all night, and that's just on his tow vehicles. The dragsters, he does that in his sleep practically, but all night long out there working on his truck, just so that he can make sure he hauls the car up to an event, whether it be up at VIR or all the way up to Canada. He's a popular driver amongst many, many tracks, but we are very, very lucky to have Danny Sullivan based out of Great Lakes Dragway.
Yeah, you get a great group of jet cars up there.
Oh yeah. I think it's always been one of the biggest draws on the big weekends, having the jet cars there, whether it be funny cars, of course the hypersonic, Barry Richter, fantastic guy. Barry Richter, local guy, always there, always willing to help and put on a fantastic show. He's been doing some match racing with Tough Enough and humbling Tough Enough, if you will. Tough's always beating his chest about the guys beating him in 405, and Barry Richter's got Tough Enough's number, and I think Barry needs to hook up with Chief, and they could probably work out a deal, and Tough would leave Chief alone, just get beat up by Barry Richter every weekend. That'd be great.
They got Scotty Heat.
Oh, yeah, Scotty Heat, another guy, young star with the jet-powered dragsters. Big fan favorite. Scotty Heat's a great guy, very helpful, nice, humble guy. You never know he's the kind of guy that straps himself to a jet and goes over 300 miles an hour. Very humble, a great guy, always interested in putting on a good show for the fans.
Now, what's the driver's name of the Hot Blade?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot here.
Yeah.
Oh, Hot Blade. I do not know right now. And I'll get in big trouble for it, too. I just told you I can't remember names. Now you're going to put me on the spot.
Yeah, I slips my mind, too, right now.
Either way, Mark and I, we get the best seat in the house to watch those guys. I've been in the stands as a spectator to watch the jet cars, and I was fortunate enough to see it even back in the late 80s and early 90s when they would add the chemicals into the fuel, blow the different colors of smoke, the blues, the pinks, just amazing to see. And they no longer do that. I guess there might have been some kind of chemical that they frowned upon in there. But, to be able to see it from in the stands, and now Mark and I, and of course the computer operators, whether it be Mike or one of the other guys that switch roles, they've done a great job of cross-training the staff, starting line staff, and just about any of those guys are capable of doing any of the jobs, whether it be starting the cars with a button, running the computer upstairs, working the water box, and acting as a secondary, starter, helping out. You guys do a great job. And we get to see the jet cars, of course, up close and personal from up in the tower. There's nothing like looking up the pipe and seeing the burners working, seeing the jet actually fire underneath there, and of course, feeling the heat and the force of that jet through the very thin layer of plexiglass up in the tower.
Yeah, you guys love getting shooken around up there.
Oh, yeah, they call it a tower ride, and they mean it. That whole building shakes. We've been able to see the bones of it, of course, the steel superstructure, and it's not going anywhere. But the skin has certainly been damaged. We've been on fire a few times. We've had to pull some panels off. Tough Enough he takes great pride in the fact that he was able to light the tower on fire. He always threatens, and we call him out on it. We challenge him. Okay, light us on fire. And we can always tell when he's not kidding around when the tailpipe of of the Tough Jet is facing right at the tower. And you can just see, imagine the smile on his face as he's in there hitting the burners, trying to cook the tower up. And we've had to abandon ship a couple of times, but never really serious. I'd say that the most damage we've ever had up in the tower during a jet car pass was I was fortunate to have my wife up in there one late evening, and the jets were making passes. And this was before the remodel, and birds had made the tower their home. And one of the jet cars was doing some pops, and next thing you know, this little tiny bird that had just been born falls out of its nest and lands on the countertop in the tower, and we all started cracking up laughing, of course. And that was the first time we'd ever seen anything like that happen. Otherwise, computers are flying, monitors fall on the floor. You never know what's going to happen to the timing computers when the jet cars are doing their pops.
Yeah, I know you guys had Dave Motter and the Dragonfire up there this year.
Yeah, Dave Motter's a great guy. He's been another source of good information and good advice for not only, of course, Tough Enough with the Tough Jet, but for all the jet cars. Motter is the current, the chassis inspector, and if you want to run a jet car, you basically got to go through Motter, and that's a good design. He's dedicated 100% towards safety, and he knows those cars, and he went over the Tough Jet, every nut, bolt, and gave us a whole list of things that we had to do to that vehicle to get it in compliance, and, Tough, and, of course, Randy Henning were more than willing to comply and listen to Motter's advice, and he had plenty of it, and it was all very helpful in getting that car back on the track and keeping things safe.
Yeah, Dave's shaken up the towers many times.
Oh, yeah, he's another local guy. It's just amazing the amount of jet car drivers that live within, a 50-mile radius of Great Lakes Dragway.
Then you remember when Franny Pepler used to rock the towers?
Oh, yeah, Fran Pepler. I ran into her once at Legend Racing Enterprises in Schaumburg, Illinois. She came in one afternoon. I was in there talking with Doug and Steve Roden, and in comes Fran Pepler just to buy a couple of fittings. She was going to be racing later on that night or later that weekend, and just came in for a fitting, and I got to meet her and introduce myself, and she is quite the driver and always fun to watch. Really missed her. I think that she had, obviously, the ladies were big fans of Fran and her jet car, but I think all the jet car fans miss Fran Pepler.
Yeah. So what was it like for you to get behind the wheel the first time of the car you're driving now?
It was kind of fun. I actually was able to buy the car from a family who, unfortunately, the owner had passed away suddenly, and his name was Gary Rudeheaver out of McAllen, Texas. A great guy, a good family man, and a big-time racer, both on the street and on the strip. And his Camaro went up for sale on back in the eBay days, and I found it, and we hammered out a deal, and my wife and I drove down there over a Memorial Day weekend, and it was quite the trip. Went down and bought the car. It hadn't been ran for quite some time, and I remember his daughter, which I keep in touch with now on Facebook, Lee. She was a fantastic lady. Cried when we left with that car, but I think out of sadness that the car was leaving and it was kind of connected to her dad, but I think also happy that she saw that it was going to go to somebody who was going to keep that car together and race it, which I think she understood that Gary would have wanted. And it took a lot of time and effort to get the fuel system, the electrical system all up to par. But I'd always thought that Gary was with me when I was working on the car. And on its maiden voyage, we took it up, of course, Great Lakes Dragway. And I had a problem with the fuel system. I had a gauge on the carburetor, secondary fuel circuit that was reading the wrong pressures. So it wasn't feeding the carburetor as much as it could have. So what would happen is it would launch great. I'd go through, first gear, grab second gear, and it would start to fall over. And it limited me to running about, 1150 for that day. And I think that was by design, not mine, of course. I wanted to just hold the foot to the floor and go eighth all day long. But that was my first experience with the car at the track. Came back and found the problem. It was just a faulty gauge, and replaced that gauge. Went back and started hitting it. It's a nitrous engine, but we were running that on motor, and very happy about that. And it was quite the experience because it's not a street car. It's something I couldn't drive it on the street and check things out. Its maiden voyage with me behind the wheel was at the track, and it was fun. I'll certainly never forget that.
So what's the quickest pass you've had with the car?
We've actually gone on nitrous tune, running some nitrous with a 200 shot. It ran 825 at 170 something miles an hour. I forgot exactly the mile an hour, but that's as fast as it's gone. I was very fortunate that day when I made that pass. Dave and Amy were there from ARS Promotions, and Amy got great footage of the run, and so yeah, it's out there. I think it's on YouTube now on ars-tv.com on their video archives. You see the Red Baron go at 825, I believe.
So what made you come up with the name of the Red Baron?
Well, the car was red, and that was about all it took, I think. No other reason than that. I thought, well, I really hadn't seen a Red Baron themed car. I knew there was a few. There's a Volkswagen that's awesome, that tours and does very, very well. It's a really cool looking car. So yeah, I thought the Red Baron. Then I thought, well, I'll go with that theme, and maybe have the car wrapped in something like that. But never was able to do it. Raising a family and with young kids, and now even with older kids going into college, priorities is always tough. And if I go back to the day that I bought the car, Lee Rudeheaver, the daughter, she looked at my wife and I, and she just was very, very serious, and she said, "Don't ever let this car come between you. The most important thing is you guys." And it kind of put everything in perspective right from the start. That racing is fun and drag racing is awesome, but it's secondary to what's really, really important, and of course that's family.
Now, when you take the car out, how many crew members do you have?
Crew members, I probably have 1,000. And I use that. It's obviously not true. Typically, Tough Enough, one of my good friends, he is always willing, even if I'm not, to help me work on the car. He knows that I'm the ultimate lazy driver, that I don't want to fix things, I don't want to touch things at the track, I just want to race the car, shut it off for a little while, then go put some fuel in it, run it again. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to rip the engine halfway apart and then make another pass, because I don't want to push it that hard. I want to have fun, I want to race the car, but I'm not looking to break speed limits or records. So I like to kind of take it easy. But of course, I just mentioned a whole list of guys. Excuse me. Danny Sullivan, Tough Enough, Mark Mueller, Mark Magnuson, Randy Hennig. If I need anything, well, there's Jim Plimpton. If I ever need anything in the track, I got hundreds of people that'll help me.
That's good. So, Mike, let's talk about this Pinewood Derby coming up next month.
Oh, I'm glad you asked about that. That is going to be a first for Great Lakes Dragway. We have a 6-lane former Boy Scout track, Cub Scout track, that we've set up in the pavilion. And when I first talked with Randy Henning about it, when I first talked with Randy Henning about it, he was on board right from the start. And explained to him that I got the track, and he said, great, let's do it. We're going to do it this winter. And I said, okay, fine. Next thing I know, he's got, January 1st set up, and that's when we're going to do it. And the track is already there. I set it up with Chris Cox and my cousin Eric Wassell and his son. We set up the track this Saturday, and it's in the pavilion. It's working properly. The event has been advertised as free, as far as the Pinewood Car Shootout, we're calling it. The Pine Car Shootout. Free admission. So we're looking to have the family-friendly deal. Kids of all ages bring their cars, that whether they had already built them for a previous Cub Scout event, they've been sitting for 10 years like my cars have, or they've custom built it just for this event. It is going to be fun. It's going to be basically grudge racing, call-outs. There'll be betting, I'm sure. And it's an experiment. We're going to see what people want. Do they want to run it like a Pinewood Derby race, like you see the Cub Scouts, where it's strictly by the rules and it has a definite standard format? We may go that way. That's fine. But I just want to make sure that we have time for testing and tuning and grudge racing, side-by-side matchup, call-out, betting. We just want to have fun with it. And, Randy and Claire and Marcel, they're not going to charge anybody to do it. So it's going to be a fun event. Yes, on New Year's Day. And the Torque Alley Tap will be open. And I'm sure they'll be featuring some Bloody Marys and whatnot that could ease the heads and of those who may have partied a little bit too much on New Year's Eve. But I talked with Lee from the food stand, and he's putting together a menu now. So we're going to have some great food, of course, beverages, and the pavilion will be very warm. They've insulated the ceiling, and there's a big wood-burning stove in there right now. Plenty of wood to burn, and it is going to be a blast. So that's coming up, of course, January 1st, New Year's Day. They're considering, weather permitting, and I guess it's a done deal. If the track is clear of snow and ice, they're going to have bracket racing. And Don DeBear would probably know better details about that. And, talk about another guy to admire. That's a guy that's certainly worth admiration of all the racers, whether you're a bracket racer, a grudge racer, or just a test and tuner. Don DeBear does a fantastic job organizing the events, getting the cars on the track, getting the show out there in front of the crowd, and working with the racers. He understands what it takes to run the cars. He's a racer himself, and he's certainly a blast to work with.
No, the wife and I came out to the track last year, New Year's Day, when Brian tried to run the jet car down the track.
I did hear about that. I wasn't there for that one, but I did hear he started to fire it up, and I don't know if he was having issues with it or it was weather-related, but I did hear that I thought he had it actually fired up and threw a couple fireballs out of it at least.
Yeah, he used too much fuel for the fire show, which then it wouldn't get down the track because the fuel ran out.
Well, once again, there might have been a little bit of God, his hand involved in that, and maybe decided that the track wasn't a safe place for the car. So to run it out of fuel before it could get up to speed, maybe a wise choice.
So now what time is the Pinewood Derby going to start?
Freddie was going to look at that and, talk about another guy that's great to work with, Freddie, of course. Freddie's big with the import scene, and he's a real big advocate for the imports to the point where, he'll joke and kid about the domestics and whatnot, and I think it's all in good humor. I mean, Freddie is a drag racer. He respects all the cars, whether they're American-made or domestics, especially domestics, especially imports, rather. But Freddie got asked that question online the other day, and he threw out